Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the final day of the International Council of Museums UK Working Internationally conference. The conference is organised by ICOM UK in partnership with NMDC, with support from the British Council and curatorial support from Barker Langham. Today's theme is on the future of museums, and I'll be your host for the day, Edmund Connolly, he, him. And I do have to apologise, I am in desperate need of a lockdown haircut, so lovely to connect with you all, even if it is remotely in these trying times. So looking to the day ahead, I'm going to give a little introduction to the day, and then at 10:10, I'll be handing over to Chair of ICOM UK, Tonya Nelson, who will be talking with Skinder Hundal, Director of Arts from the British Council. At 11:30, you'll join me along with Ana Elizabeth Gonzalez, Director of the Panama Canal Museum. Anna's going to present her personal tour and insights of the museum, followed by a Q&A. And then she and I will do a virtual change and strategy planning activity that we hope you might do at your own organisations. At 12:30, we'll have our break for lunch. And then we are back at 2 o'clock with Barker Langham, who will present a video featuring colleagues from Museum of London, Museum of African American History and Culture, Museum of Modern Art, and the Museum of Minerals, exploring how museums are navigating ever-evolving landscapes and shedding light on why and for whom they collect. After an hour's break, we are joined by my fellow ICOM UK board member, Aaron Rees, who will be chairing a discussion from students from Leicester and University College London universities. And then we'll be back at 5 o'clock to wrap up the day, where I'll be joined by Tonya Nelson, Eric Langham, and Catherine Simpson to close the conference and this wonderful day off. So I think it's now just for me to make some few opening comments about the theme of today and what we should be thinking about in this ever-changing world. So the topic of today is the future of museums. And I would suggest that whilst we will be discussing what museums are currently doing and what they could be doing, we should reflect on the learnings from the Social Justice and Sustainability Conference days to ask, what should a museum be doing right now? And what should we be doing 5, 10 years from now? Museums have existed for many centuries, but jury's out on really when the first museum was. Was it the Ashmolean in the 17th century, designed to educate the public? Or do we look further back with the procession of objects, artworks, and artifacts of Ashurbanipal's reliefs that are over 2,000 years old? Or do we go further still to the island of Sulawesi, Indonesia, 45,000 years ago, with the first known depiction of an animal in art? It's a very good representation of a pig, so if you haven't seen it, I do recommend you go look it up. Do we perhaps struggle to pinpoint this moment because we don't yet have a clear definition of a museum? So without a definition, how can we truly conceive of their future? Well, I think the 3 examples I just gave actually do have some similar elements that we will no doubt discuss today. They all feature collections. They all have some notion of the public and the private space and creativity, but they all also revolve around an audience. Whether you're a visitor, willing or not, to the city of Ur, or an Egyptology enthusiast in Oxford, the experience and value of consuming culture is paramount. So perhaps, in order to really look forward, we should first look back. The sessions of today emulate this somewhat chronological approach, starting with Tonya's session reflecting on how the past 2 years will impact our futures. Anna will be telling us about a museum changing its future in the now, and then we'll be hearing from Barker Langham and students who are the futures of now and the future leaders and the leaders of now. Apologies. For the day, I ask us all to be open-minded to new ways of doing things, confident enough to reflect on what we do right now, and self-aware to realise that whilst what we have right now may not be the ideal, change is inevitable, and it's best we steer this ship rather than be forced on a journey we don't want to take. Here in the UK, the term culture near me has consecutively peaked at each of the lockdown in search trends. People are looking for ways to engage with culture in hyper-local ways more than ever. Museums have always been integral to our societies and identities, and will continue to be so. They just might be a little different. And with that, I would wrap up my opening address. Thank you all again for attending. And I'll be handing over to our first session of the day, which is with Tonya Nelson, a familiar face, I'm sure, to many of you, who is the current chair of ICOM UK and as of April last year, London Area Director for Arts Council England. Thank you very much, Tonya.
Thank you, Ed, for handing over. Right now, I'm seeing nothing on my screen, so I'm not quite sure if you're seeing me or not right now.
We can see you.
Okay, great, great. So yes, I'm delighted to be hosting this In Conversation session with Skinder Hundal, who is the Director of Arts at the British Council. In this conversation, I'll be kind of wearing two hats. I'll be wearing my ICOM UK Chair hat, but I also will be wearing my Arts Council hat, because I think the conversation Skinder and I want to have is about our publicly funded institutions that help fund and develop arts, and how our organizations are really working towards a vision, and how we can, and how that vision kind of impacts museums. But before we get started, what I want to do is just introduce Skinder properly. So he's Director of Arts at British Council, where he oversees multiple art forms and major art activities, including the bilateral seasons that that British Council offers. So this year's UK Australia year 2021-2022, and the kind of overseeing of the British pavilions at the Venice Biennale in terms of arts and architecture. He also oversees the work related to cultural programming for the London Book Fair, as well as working with developments around COP26 and the digital collaboration open calls. Prior to joining the British Council, Skinder was founding CEO and director of the New Art Exchange, where he cemented a reputation for connecting diverse arts and cultural projects between the UK and overseas, working across art forms. And his international experience includes working with the Venice Biennales, TED Global, Google Arts and Culture, and working with the World War I centenary, 1418 now. So the two of us will be talking together. And I mean, so, you know, we're just to give you some context, we will be kind of framing our discussion in terms of, you know, the future strategies of our organizations, but also bringing in, I mean, we both have the tremendous opportunity of seeing lots of different art and museum projects. And so we'll be bringing our reflections of work we've seen in the UK and abroad into this conversation. But what we've decided to do is, the way to structure this conversation is, we're going to go over 4 particular themes. So the first theme is going to be about how our organizations are changing to be fit for the future and what that means for museums. Then we're going to be talking about decolonization. Next, we'll talk about digital. And then finally, we will talk about the future of working internationally, since this is the theme of our conference. So that's where we're going to go. I mean, before we start, Skinder, does that sound good to you?
Sounds amazing. And thank you, Tonya, for inviting me to the conference. So I'm really pleased to be here and trying to explore all these complex subject matters. Yes. And go easy on me. I'm new.
Yes. Certainly will. And just I mean, just one thing to say is, what I forgot to say before is, what we've tried to do is structure this conversation so that we'll have 10 to 15 minutes at the end for questions. So please do share, you know, what questions you'd like to ask us in the Q&A, and then we'll try to come back to those at the end. So without further ado, I think we should talk about the first theme, which is, you know, how are organizations changing themselves to be fit for the future, and what does that mean for museums? Now, I do want to point out in this that Skinder has been in his role for a couple of months, and I've been in my role for a couple of months as London area director. And I think us as two people of color in leadership in these organizations, I think that points to something around change and fit for purpose. But I want to just talk to Skinder in the beginning about, what is the British Council strategy going forward, and how do you think that's going to affect museums?
Well, thank you, Tonya. So it's such a big question, isn't it? I mean, the strategy going forward. I mean, we've seen a lot of things emerge last year, and there's been a huge realization around the kind of business models of many of our practices in museums, but also at British Council, and that there is a huge vulnerability when we're facing these big, huge seismic changes, in the world. And, being prepared for these seismic changes means having to rethink, reimagine, and realign in a way our purpose and understand what the new shift is. It's always good to reincarnate. I always think that. But if you think about, the world we're in right now, we've come through a real huge crisis, and we're not through that. What we're one fifth into this new century, and you've got to ask the question, what has happened here and is happening? And it almost feels as if, we've gone beyond the tipping point of sanity and goodness even. And, as each decade emerges, there seems to be a new code to crack. And as organizations, we've got to be far more robust, resilient, all the big words that we want to be, in order to deal with this complexity. This health and well-being agenda, the issues around poverty, inequality, environmental racism, climate and economic crisis, the kind of the breaking up of a unified kingdom at risk, multilateral failure, political leadership wobbling in post-factual democracies, as autocracies and dictators seem to be emerging. So how does an organization sit within such a context? It's important then to create the right kind of structures, the right kind of resourcing, the right kind of investment going forward. So British Council is asking a lot of questions of itself, its purpose, its role. There's one thing that remains very, very central there to all of us, and that is cultural relations. If we're looking at, transforming the contribution arts makes, is that it is designed around people. It is people who are central that, instigate and initiate the change we need to see. And so for one of the big things at British Council is about building trust in various regions, country to country, business to business, with different type of communities, artists, curators, etc. Building that trust continues to be at the center of what British Council does. In terms of, dealing with this kind of constant state of flux, emergency and crisis, it means that our approach to collaboration needs to be far more strategic and our resources very much prioritized and aligned. And we're going through an exercise right now where we're looking to determine, what the organization needs to be going forward. I always think that, the purpose and role of museums, purpose and role of art and culture is very central, but I am biased, obviously, because I work within the arts. And I think there is a exceptional need for us to start to rethink and reincarnate our strategies so that our collaboration is more interconnected. So a lot of the strategy that we're looking at now is thinking, well, how do we, remain open and committed? How do we instigate expertise? How do we stay optimistic and bold? These are values. And how do we create this mutual intersectional exchange and design? A design that really kind of you know, has a meaningful impact on not just what we've seen emerge as in the hyper local, but also the kind of the need to understand the kind of global dynamic. And why is that? Well, we'll talk about it a lot more as we go along, but I think there are many priorities at play that we have to consider. You know, if you think about non-departmental public bodies like British Council, who are moving towards a more collaborative partnership invested role rather than just simply being known as a funder. We want to be seen as a collaborative partner, an instigator, but also a receiver of ideas, hence the expansion of open call, as you've seen with Digital Collaboration Fund or the COP26, which we can talk about later on. But if you look at some of the big priorities for the UK right now, it is actually promoting shared values. It is about sharing prosperity and creating enterprise and exchange. And it is about creating something good so that our global challenges are met by really, really important programs and projects and individuals that make up these, you know, incredible episodes of change that transform our lives. You know, there is a whole leveling up agenda in the UK. How do we as an organization work then across the UK, you know, outside of the epicenters, as much as include the epicenters, you know, across the UK and connect worldwide? You know, British Council, you know, it's incredible. I mean, 110, 120 odd countries, hundreds of millions of people engaged, a multitude of programs that I still do not understand, are all kind of crisscrossing and intersecting to create this kind of very vibrant contribution. And a lot of people perhaps don't understand British Council. So one of the big things for us is to really get the sector to understand how it can work with us. And I'm not saying I know all the answers to that just yet, but I do know one thing is that we are open and committed to that change agenda. And we have to be. And it's not for our own survival, it's actually for the impact that art and culture makes in building cultural relations, and therefore having a huge seismic role in creating a vibrant sector. You know, one of the key things for us is to create that, you know, that scale, so that the sector in the UK also benefits, but it benefits in a mutual way. That it's not a one-directional exchange. It's not a transaction either. This is about the deeper relationship we need to have with the world we're in right now. So I think this whole thing about, the health pandemic, Black Lives Matter, the issues around, you know, poverty, inequality, the climate crisis, which seems to be, you know, increasingly hotter, you know, in terms of a topic. There needs to be kind of a contribution from our sector in all these areas to deal with the appetite. The appetite isn't just coming from a strategic perspective. It's coming from the root. It's coming from the ground. It's coming from communities disaffected. This is a new generation of thinkers out there that are being born as a consequence of crisis, and we've seen that accelerate last year. So, you know, with these big institutions, and I always think of British Council as a huge tanker on a mission, going in a direction. Safe pair of hands, can handle the stormy sea, hopefully. But how fast can it move, and how fast do we need to move? And is it about us, or is it about the wider ecology? Obviously about the wider ecology. So I hope that gives you a flavor. I mean, I'll talk a little bit more about more specifics later on, obviously.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think what you said resonates so much with what Arts Council is thinking about in terms of its strategic focus. So right before COVID, Arts Council launched its new 10-year strategy. And, you know, the title of that strategy is Let's Create. Now, the title of the last strategy was Great Arts for Everybody. And I think those titles kind of reflect the change in thinking, in the sense that previously we were about getting people to engage with arts. And we still want to do that. But actually what we want to do now is think about everybody being involved with creativity. It's not just about consuming art, but it's about being part of it and being part of a creative culture where we are co-creating and everybody's working together, and that we're cultivating the artists of the future that will come from different backgrounds. And so I think, you know, one of the things that we found when we were developing the strategy is, in terms of our research, was one, I think the UK arts sector, including museums, weren't as diverse as they could be, and we wanted to really do something about that. We also felt that potentially arts organizations, and again, within that I include museums, their business models were not as robust as they could be. So many people were on kind of shaky business models. And that generally we got the sense from what we were hearing is that there was a resistance to kind of innovation and risk taking, that people were very hesitant to do that. And so the strategy that we put together is really about providing that platform. One, I mean, really doing what we can to encourage people to think about diversifying their staff, in terms of, you know, arts organizations, diversifying staff, and being very relevant in terms of the content that they're providing to audiences. And we also want to push forward that this idea of dynamism. So it's like, you know, how can we create organizations that are really open to change, to reflect, I mean, as you said, Skinder, all of these issues, these national issues that are coming, you know, I think museums and culture and generally have a role to play. And how are we providing platforms where people can shift and change? And I think with COVID, what we've seen is people have been maybe forced in a position where they've had to pivot very quickly. I mean, I think with the digital bit, you know, physical exhibitions to digital. And I think actually a new capability maybe has come out of that, where people think, oh, you know, we can shift much faster than we thought before COVID. And so we want to harness that at Arts Council and start to fund that. So in terms of the future and about people engaging with Arts Council, you know, we will be thinking about how organizations demonstrate that they are dynamic, and how they demonstrate that they are being inclusive and relevant. And so museums will have to be thinking about that, and then thinking about how it's encouraging people to participate in culture from the individual level, at the community level, and at the national level, pushing forward in terms of innovation and what we're doing differently. So yeah, it feels like, you know, between Arts Council and British Council, we've got some synergies in terms of what we're asking organizations that we support to do, and where our organizations are going.
Tonya, that's really useful to hear. You know, your thoughts and the Let's Create strategy, because obviously before I came to British Council, we were digesting the Let's Create, thinking about the new NPO round. Of course, it got delayed by another year. And I think understanding these kind of entry points and details and principles behind the policy is really, really important to study for the sector. I mean, one of the key things that, you know, if I was to think about, you know, the British Council delivery model, you know, I call it, particularly in the arts, I call it the Trinity and six-pack, right? So the Trinity is very much about three key areas. That's cultural exchange, creative economies, and art responding to global issues. And then within that, there are about 6 strands of engagement, which support audiences and artists, cultural professionals, spotlights on, you know, heightened programs and cultural activities. And then in the creative economy side of things, we're looking at enterprise, looking at policy change, and very importantly, leadership, because it's the pipeline that's going to make the difference. And of course, the leaders now who are going to accelerate the change we need to see within the scenario we're in. And in terms of art responding to global issues, the third part of the Trinity and the 6th area, it's really about creating programs which share new futures in a way where we're dealing with, you know, for example, missing history or protecting certain heritage in order to design the future. So this kind of tick-tock between what was in the past and what is expected of the future. And taking time to study that will be an important part of this new sort of emergence. And British Council, if you think about it, has gone through a real shock last year. If you think about, the business model, which is very much designed around 3 pillars. There's a trading side to the business, or the charity, which looks at English exams and English lessons. Then there's 2 other areas, which is around education, and then the other one is art and culture. So what we're trying to look at is kind of look at, again, intersectional relationships internally so that they benefit the sector. So, art, has a kind of central sort of space within an organization like British Council. One question I wanted to ask you, Tonya, is because, Tonya, is that you've been involved, obviously, in chairing ICOM now, and you've been involved in several conferences. And one of the big things you mentioned right now was the topic of decolonization, which for the globe, and if you think about the people that I'm speaking to, this is day 63, by the way. Not that I'm counting, but I am doing a Twitter feed, so sharing my experiences each day. So on day 63, I have met hundreds and hundreds of people across the world already. The one big thing that's coming out is the big D word, and that is decolonization. And I think you were involved in a conversation in January that you were chairing. I wanted to find out from you, what are your reflections about decolonization, say within Arts Council, within ICOM, within the museum sector, and how it might relate to some of the thinking that British Council's sort of, I guess, instigating amongst its huge network of 12,000 people.
Yeah, well, happy to talk about that because, we had a session back in January that was co-supported by British Council and Museums Association. And we had speakers from South Africa, New Zealand, and then 2 speakers from the UK, really talking about the future of decolonization. And I think what struck me about that was, a couple of things. First of all, I think the root of decolonization within the museum context has been about restitution of objects. And that has put the conversation into a more transactional mode. It's about this object's here, how do we transfer it there? And I think while that conversation does have to happen, I think in terms of really about decolonization, which is about thinking differently, what information do we use? What stories do we tell in our museums? How does that connect globally? That actually we have to move out of this thinking about transactions and think about building long-term relationships where and those relationships are equal, where we are sharing experiences of how we work, how we do things differently. And I think the speakers all said that there's no transactional way to do decolonization. It's all about building relationships. The other thing that came out from that was about structures and systems, that this is not something that can be done on the edges, that it's really fundamentally organizations, museums rethinking how they operate. And it could be down to cataloging, the object cataloging systems that in a way do not let, the full story of objects and context really shine. And so the panelists really, kind of emphasize the fact that you have to think about things from the ground up in terms of the way organizations are built and how museums are operating in order to really digest and really kind of push forward decolonization. Another thing that came out was really about actually, and this is very forward thinking in terms of the decolonization process actually becomes a platform for collaboration, relationship building, and empathy building. So this conversation by its very nature can't be transactional. It has to be collaborative. And in order to do that, we build empathy for each other. We build empathy across borders. And I thought that was really, really interesting. And the final thing I just wanted to add about that conversation, just kind of reporting back, which was we really have to come to terms with this debate about academic knowledge versus lived experience, and how we reflect that in our museums, and how we kind of, we are biased towards academic expertise, but how do we bring that lived experience into the stories that we tell? So, I mean, I think that conversation really did a lot to think about the future of museums in the context of decolonization. Not sure how that resonates with your perspectives.
No, that's really, really amazing to hear, Tonya, the kind of level of thinking going into the kind of principle and pragmatics at play that you guys are considering. I mean, I was just thinking about when you said transaction, and I was thinking about what Franklin Simmons of the Perez Museum had said recently around this is not, well, first of all, it's about love, but it's not about agreement, and it's about having open hearts. So when we talk about relationships and you think about British Council, it's about cultural relations. You know, that at the heart of it, it's about building that. So if we cannot understand who we are, or we don't recognize shifting mindset, you know, we are in a situation whereby certain histories are then not recognized or potentially deleted or even fabricated to some extent in order to hit a particular business need. I don't know. I mean, I'm just thinking about, you know, if you think about decolonizing, you know, something like British Council, which is a huge conglomerate in 110 countries, born in the 30s, you know, about to be 90 years old. Where are we in our 9th decade right now? You know, well, where do we sit with all this? You know, how are we representing the kind of emerging language or the kind of cultural nuances? How do we create it so that it's not transactional and one directional, that there is a kind of mutuality between what is being designed? And it's not as if, you know, the UK is the pioneer on everything. No, because I think there's a kind of perception that British Council is promoting UK arts, you know, and that it comes in and, you know, and helps design different thinking in different parts of the world using British systems. Well, there is an element of that, of course, but I think there's a lot to learn from one another. And, you know, if you see the kind of the changes in sub-Saharan Africa, in some of the museum sectors there, or if you see some of the kind of, you know, biennials that are emerging in all parts of the world, there is a kind of shifting power dynamic and reference to history. And decolonizing isn't something that can be dealt with just on a kind of singular organizational level or within the network alone. It's something that needs to sit outside, you know. So that's why when we see the protests of Black Lives Matter, we see the footballers before their matches kneeling down on the ground, it's a kind of symbolism of change that we're seeing. That's absolutely vital right now in order to create, you know, a peaceful, prosperous, connected and interconnected planet that cares about each other, so that we're creating this idea of collaborative communities that are conscious and creative at the same time. I call it my 4 C's. So, you know, it's kind of creating the sea change then, using this kind of collaborative dynamic, which then unlocks, you know, the idea of, you know, an equalities and diversity and inclusion plan that doesn't look at just processes and protocols, but it looks at the deeper sense of self within it. And it goes to the heart of the matter, or the gut instinct that one feels and senses. And that the voices that are contributing to this cannot just be those that have the privilege of making a decision. It has to be an all-inclusive methodology. So that's why, you know, at British Council we're introducing an anti-racist action plan, where we've got a whole range of new programs and open calls, whereby they put at the centre the idea of, you know, equality, diversity, and inclusion, and within that, this idea that, you know, the decolonizing kind of evolution within the kind of network is being heard and given platform and space to co-design and redesign certain systems that exist within our kind of our network. So, you know, there's a whole huge agenda here around change, but it's driven with a passion to be more inclusive, and of course to in a sense design, you know, a world whereby our cultural relations have a deeper affection for each other, and that we're not just tolerating through an agreement or a written contract where we sign and deliver. It's about, you know, in a sense, a form of restitution of histories that can contribute right now, right here, so that people feel that they are part of something, or that they are included as part of the organization that we're in. And it sits on a micro to macro level as well. And then it's also the kind of collaborative partnerships that we're working with. So it sits with policy, it sits with program design, it sits with people.
Yeah.
So that's where I think where we are at the moment. But I think it's organic, it's growing, but there is there are strategies that support it too. So, you know, when I say strategies, I mean things that we can monitor, things that we can create targets for, things that we can, you know, bring in measurable impact, and see the change that, you know, that unlocks the new conversation, that unlocks the new partner that's missing. Because when you bring that new partner to the table, there's a birth of revolutionary spirit and hunger that you know, that forces the invention, pushes the change. And I think that we've been in 1/15 of the century, 21 years in, 20 years in. Look, looking back, things don't seem to be very good right now. So I think we need some new ideas. And where are the ideas going to come from? Well, they're going to come from these kind of approaches, these kind of sort of methods, which kind of really kind of generate and instigate those voices. Sorry, I'm going on far too long.
No, I just want to pick up on something before a really important point, because what you've said here, you know, about building relationships. And I think we can't talk about building relationships without talking about digital technology and, you know, the influence that social media is having on the way that we operate. Now through COVID, we all have started to work remotely and be able to build relationships via, you know, digital channels, that type of thing. And also there's just the progression of digital technologies in terms of new immersive technologies, artificial intelligence, and those types of things. So I thought we could kind of shift the conversation to talk about digital. I don't know if you want to kick off by just talking about a couple of things that you're doing within the digital realm. And I can talk a little bit from the Arts Council point of view about what we're seeing that's really interesting.
Tonya, you know, I'm intimidated by the fact that you're sitting there asking me this question, because you are the master of digital, from what I remember when I first met you, when I was at New Art Exchange. But I'll give you my penny's worth on it. You know, I just think, you know, obviously last year was the kind of consolidation of all of the kind of strategies we've been talking about prior to what happened last year. And you know, if AI has been designing all of this, AI has done a great job, because we are hooked right now. And I think, you know, we're increasing, as much as it is liberating, there's a kind of imprisoning and a seduction, this sugar-coated robotic limb, I call it, that has become part of us right now. It is inescapable to think that digital and technology is not part of the future and part of right now. I mean, technology is not a new thing either. It's something that's been evolving ever since, you know, okay, Newton's laws of physics. You know, it's ever since the first handy camera came out, you know, to the kind of the advancement of the, you know, all the kind of technologies we use in our hands constantly. And I think that, you know, our minds are subdued into these new desires. You know, they're helped along by AI, our AI companion, who is keeping, is in our kind of echo chamber buddies in check to some degree. So how do we break out of this echo chamber of technological kind of design of the human, So the kind of humans interaction with the kind of non-human world is that kind of intersection between technology, the human, and nature. So if we start to look at it in that kind of perspective, then we start to think, okay, so it's here, now we've got to deal with it. And at British Council last year, there was a crisis here. You know, it was bleeding a lot of money from closing down a lot of operations due to the pandemic and making sure that the public was healthy. The shift then to digital is not an easy thing. First of all, the business models around digital are not so straightforward. You know, you can have your non-fungible tokens making 63 million for certain artists, but I don't think that's going to be something that is there for everyone. So in a sense, the business model has to be very much thought through. The infrastructures need to change. The investment needs to start to happen. But when organizations are bleeding money and they haven't got the resource to invest, what do? Well, it is about being resourceful. And I think that there are models out there that British Council has itself been pioneering and unwittingly, unknowingly, but it's had huge success. You know, so for example, the film program, 5 Films for Freedom, right now has just launched yesterday. Launched about 5-6 years ago, before all this. But Tonya, you know that the whole digital agenda was something big, particularly from 2008 onwards, when the seismic crash happened. We had to reinvent how we were exchanging and interacting. The climate crisis itself has led to all of these calls, these webinars. We're in a world of webinars and Teams and Zooms, and we're in that kind of 2-dimensional space. But how do we keep the interactive, 3-dimensional, instinctive reality as well? You know, so balancing and coupling that within the work means that we have to move towards hybridization in terms of our delivery. That means a strong shift towards the digital. That's something that we've learned because we know that it's weirdly, it's a safer space. I mean, I'm not going to catch a virus over this space, but I can continue to interact. There's nothing better, however, than walking into a museum and sensing the scent of those ancient years that make that object. So as much as we are shifting towards a more digital world, a more AI-driven algorithmic world, we have to be also conscious of the seduction of the screen, seduction of this incredible technology that, you know, folds time in, you know, in a click of the speed of light. We are suddenly in different parts of the world. I mean, this is an incredible technology, but we need to also keep the kind of human values and those systems alive too in parallel. So it's finding the third space of hybrid invention between the digital face-to-face juxtaposed with the non-human and the natural environments within the kind of the species we are.
Yeah, completely agree with you. Yeah, completely agree with you that, you know, I think what we saw, at least from Arts Council point of view during the COVID period, which was, you know, you had digital directors, digital staff at organizations that, you know, found it very hard to get buy-in from their organizations before COVID. And then suddenly during COVID, they're the most popular person in the room. And that we had this rapid upskilling of people across organizations in terms of digital. And I think that's really good. But now coming out of COVID, we're going to have a recalibration where we say, how does that new digital you know, skill that we have and ability, how does that marry with the physical world? And I think that's exactly right. I just wanted to take time just to highlight some work that Arts Council did with regards to South by Southwest, which actually just kind of premiered earlier this week, where we had a session called The Future of Museums as related to immersive technology and AI, where I moderated a discussion between the National Gallery, London, the Forever Project, which worked with the Jewish Museum on capturing and making holograms, AI-enabled holograms of Holocaust survivors to enable young people to still interact with them. And then also British Library project called Imaginary Cities, where they use the archive of their map archives of major cities and used an algorithm to imagine what the future of those cities could look like, or what future cities could look like. And I think what was really interesting about that conversation was, we had the National Gallery, which was really focused on taking the paintings they have and using immersive technology to put them back in their context when they were painted. And so people getting a chance to really transport themselves back in time to see, where was this painting actually originally hung? What was the environment? How was it engaged with? You have the Forever Project that's bringing the past into the present, so you can engage with it today. And then you have the British Library saying, how do we use our collections and archives to think about the future? And so I think coming out of that, there is this discussion about museums. Are they simply guardians of the past, or are they now architects of the future? And how do we, how can we kind of how do we manage that? And I think one thing that you said is very important, which is this AI, which is, AI is only as good as the information and the data that we give it. And, all the biases that we're thinking in terms of decolonization could repeat themselves if we don't think about artificial intelligence in the right ways. And so Goldsmiths University, I know, was leading on doing a project with several large-scale museums in the UK and abroad, where they were really thinking about, okay, when we think about AI in museums, we've got to think about the ethical issues alongside the innovation. These can't be two separate things. We can't innovate and think, oh, here's a new something, without thinking about the ethical implications. And I think our capacity to be able to think across, yeah, we can do this new thing, but what does that mean in terms of our overall vision, mission, values, purpose? They have to be done together. So that's just some things I thought were worth sharing on the digital realm.
No, it's really, really, really brilliant to hear some examples, Tonya. And, it reminds me of the work that University of Nottingham were embarking upon with a partnership with several other universities. It was called Trustworthy Autonomous Systems, whereby the research allows for, academics, scientists to work with, wider sectors from health, from arts, to come together to think about how do you design what you're talking about, i.e. the AI, in a way that, unlocks a new reality in a way that's not driven by non-ethical kind of sort of systems of cajoling people to spend money, like the kind of the big adverts that keep popping up in our lives, and sometimes we're seduced into them ourselves. But it's kind of creating ethical engagement. I think some of the examples you've just given there, I will definitely be following them up, and that's the kind of inventive space of digital, which makes it exciting. That the kind of forever now project, for example, or the Forever Project, which can bring the past into the present in a much more kind of considered way. And there's a lot going on with AI, where you're seeing images of characters coming alive in kind of AI simulated kind of realities. So you're not only seeing a photograph, but you're seeing a video of the portrait moving. Like, it's so strange and weird, but it has a wonder about it. But it also gives the kind of, so there's a whole industry behind it, and there's a whole area of growth as to how the museum responds, which takes me into sort of the idea of futurism. So when we're thinking about sort of the future then, or future of international working, where does that sit with yourself? When we think about the future, okay, we talked about the digital, we talked about decolonizing, we talked about many things. But what about the kind of international working? Well, where does that sit for the work that you do at Arts Council? Because your role at Arts Council is multi-layered. Historically been around technology, and now it's across London, but feeding into the executive of Arts Council. So your conversations and dialogues around international working is really important. And I think the kind of dovetailing between what British Council does and what Arts Council does is really, really significant, alongside what DCMS or FCDO, the Foreign Commonwealth Development Officer, are all doing or trying to do. But how does this then impact on the museum sector?
Yeah, exactly. And I think what we're thinking around Arts Council, around international working is, in the past, we've been very focused on touring. So, and that could be touring exhibitions or, performance touring. So we've provided funding for organizations to be able to tour their work abroad. But I think some of our thinking now is evolving. And first of all, just in the short term with Brexit, we are trying very hard to provide our organizations with the knowledge around the new regulations of that. But the other thing we're really thinking about is, and again, it goes back to our original, conversation at the beginning, which is about, it's not just about the transaction of touring work, but it's about what funding can we provide to build relationships. And so particularly from a museum's point of view, really seeing that as how do we provide support that allows people to build relationships with organizations abroad that will help them achieve their mission. And I think that is where our work segues very much with British Council in terms of that relationship building bit. Do you just want to say how you're seeing, international working from the British Council point of view?
Well, this is what British Council does.
Yeah.
And, I'm coming into it. I'm also, forgive me because I am at day 63 still. And it feels like I've been here for a year, because of the kind of complex range of projects. And of course, at British Council, it works in many ways. And some of them are kind of art form driven. Some of them are more kind of cross-cutting in terms of art forms. So, there's a music, there's a whole range of stuff that we do around music and international collaboration. We do a whole range of stuff around sort of dance and theatre, literature, visual arts itself. Then there is this kind of cross-collaborative thematic that is emerging. So some of the things that are emerging now and things that museums perhaps need to be aware of are the kind of seasonal showcasing programs that we're trying to design for the future. And we're still in a design phase. So, always listening and watching and collaborating, that's always ongoing. And one of my roles is to play that role. So to be that externally facing person who's intersecting with your spaces, visiting your spaces, understanding how you work, looking at what the big themes are. Some of the big things going forward are around the kind of arts and its role in the kind of global sphere, around the global challenges. So when we think about museums, or when we think about British Council's international program, there is also the emergence of priority locations. So we're seeing there's a big sort of prioritization in what is known as official development assistance countries, ODAs, and that prioritization becomes even sharper. So things like the Indo-Pacific tilt become really, really significant, as do certain locations like Brazil, Mexico, etc. But also parts of the world whereby there are non-mutual understandings, or understandings we need to strengthen. So, for example, in Russia is a good example of that. The sub-Saharan African sort of development is really, really significant. There is a lot of inventive young people coming forward who are looking to create a new space of invention. The whole heritage and protection of heritage is going to be a huge agenda. We've got a huge partnership around the Cultural Protection Fund, and there's a huge seminar. Well, not seminar. There's an event. Let's call it an event, whereby on the 29th, 30th, and 31st. Yes, I know, more webinars. But the 29th, 30th, and 31st, we're going to be presenting something called History of Future Past. Now, this whole initiative is really looking at, the role of heritage, protecting heritage. And I think this is a huge area that museums, and certain museums in the UK, are actually engaged in already. There's a whole range of activity around this. It's not just about protecting objects. It's also about, creating capacity, thinking about, issues around climate, for example. So climate impacts on heritage sites. It impacts on objects. So there's a whole range of kind of topics at play. The whole work around cultural professionals and creating interconnections globally, it will continue to be an important part that the museum sector would need to, hopefully connect with, and will connect with, I'm sure. But I think we're at a stage where we're going through a funny year coming out of post 2020. Here we are in year 2021. We're trying to infuse a purpose, a new way of connecting, for sure. The global challenges continue to be really, really complex. We want peace, prosperity, a healthy world, a wise world, where creativity plays a very central role. And, the heritage of the future past, just to use that phrase, will be an incredibly central part of the British Council's work going forward. So I'm super optimistic about how we work with the museum sector. I'd love to see and connect with you all. And maybe, Tonya, we can organize, like a virtual visit, but get onto a real face-to-face visit with the sector at some stage, so that we can learn and also, importantly, unlearn.
Yeah, and I think, now putting back my ICOM hat on,
yes.
This is what we aim to do. And I think we're really ambitious to be working with all the stakeholders, Arts Council, British Council, that are facilitating in any way international work, and making it easier for people to make those connections, build those relationships, and maintain those relationships. And it's really interesting. I think my reflections is over the past year, in a sense where we thought, in order to build those international relationships, we had to do in-person visits, and there's nothing that can substitute for in-person visits. But you do see how much the digital can supplement that and help start conversations, or how much you can start to do things internationally. It's interesting, at Arts Council, we launched like a digital development fund with Canada. So we're trying to get Canadians and people in the UK to work together. And it was supposed to be in person, but we had to launch it online. And I was really surprised at how much could be done online in terms of collaborations. But I think, as you said, we will come to a new normal where we will start to think about how is digital additive in terms of those physical visits, and how do we navigate that? But it feels like, things are opening up in terms of opportunities to engage internationally.
I couldn't agree more, Tonya. I think Koyo from the Zeitz Museum said something really profound and radical, and she was talking about, in terms of how we work, we've got to tear down the old kind of walls, in a sense. Walls are there to protect, for sure, but they also bar kind of change. So this kind of combining these kind of essential formats that make up our ecology, our ecosystem, they need some sort of refreshment. And that refreshment is to think about sites and spaces in new ways. Digital is one of them. And maybe there's a lot more we can be doing, where the museum is in the what I refer to as in the street that never lies. So, I think there is a moment now for us to make that change. We are trying to make that change, because we're in these conversations, and we're all here because we want to learn, and we want to bring something for our own respective institutions, but also collaboratively as a sector to deal with the kind of the seismic context, where the gravitational constant has shifted, and that's really kind of unsettled our forces of attraction.
Yeah, fantastic. Okay, look, I think the two of us have had fun talking to each other and answering our questions. I want to take the time to be able to answer some questions that have come from the audience. I just did a quick look at the chat, and there's one question that I thought was really interesting about language. So, we use these terms like decolonization. In the UK, we refer to people from diverse backgrounds as, BAME. I think there's a whole kind of discussion about the language we use. And this person just asking, you know, do you think it's worthwhile in terms of really considering what language we use when we're talking about decolonization? I mean, from my point of view, the discussion is important, right? The discussion of the term is important because that's where we unlock the nuances and the differences, and then we'll put out a new term, and that term will undoubtedly be packed with new meaning, and we'll have to deconstruct that at a certain point. But I always think it is important to take time to like look at language and say, you know, what do we mean when we say this word, and how can it be interpreted? And I think kind of within the sphere of kind of restitution, decolonization, actually these terms get filled with lots of different meanings. And we always have to kind of be thinking about, okay, and articulating to each other so that we're not talking across each other. Sometimes, what do we mean? I mean, I have to say, as a funny thing is, I think at Arts Council, the term engagement becomes this blanket term for many, 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 many things. And we have to unpack it at a certain point and say, what do we really mean by engagement? And so I think, you know, in this context, we do have to think about language. Just wondering what your thoughts were about.
Yeah, I think the danger is we spend so much time talking about the language, we don't get on with the action. However, one has to think and deliver the new. So to think, we need to deconstruct, get the principle right. It comes back to something that reminds me of what John Akomfrah did with Professor Stuart Hall when Autograph commissioned with Liverpool Biennial and New Art Exchange this program. Well, it's a film, which certainly was a turning point for John's career as an artist. But the term was unfinished conversation. And, you know, this kind of ever-evolving identity is increasingly at a point of crisis, but at a point of liberation too. And I think there's issues around how language is used as a form of control, and how we as institutions, we as, you know, gatekeepers and decision makers need to let go of control. But the thing with letting go of control is that we need to feel that it's going into a safe pair of hands. And taking that risk and plunge is not easy. But in order to take that risk and plunge, one has to be informed by language. And the language of, you know, like it's the latest phrase that is BIPOC, right? So Black, Indigenous, People of Color is the one that's often used in America anyway. And here we have BAME, and, you know, you can be playful with BAME, put your BAME to good use, etc. But it's a language, it's a nuance. And it's thinking, well, who's designed the language? And I think it's important to realize this, because sometimes the people who we try to represent and engage are not involved in designing the principle and behind the language. And the term BAME, you know, has been used in the news throughout 2020 during this pandemic as a way of referencing the inequality. A lot of people hadn't heard of BAME because, you know, it's a sort of industry thing, really. But now it's become the mainstream thing. But as it became a mainstream thing, the industry, or there were skirmishes in the industry to say, look, this is not a good term, or that represents identity, or it's kind of reduces the kind of intersectional definition of, you know, a person's identity, or the range of unfinished identities which are ever evolving. So the conversation around language should be ever changing. The dictionary should always be changing. And if we're going to socialize change, we need to understand what we're talking about. And we need to be clear when we use certain terms or we use certain language, what the devil we're talking about. Because I know what you mean by engagement, because engagement's huge. And it's one area that always, you know, needs a kind of follow-up question. Oh, what do you mean there? Do you mean learning, or do you mean community participation? Or do you mean audience development? Because audience development is not community participation and engagement. You do realize that. So there's this kind of, you know, it's safer to be reductionist and minimal. However, if we want change, you've got to look at the millions of fractions that sit between the 0 and the 1. That means finding the unconscious, subconscious feeling and meaning of the language. And that therefore means more dialogue, more arguments, and in a good way, constructive arguments. And that's what art is. Art is there to challenge, provoke, and change. So if we don't do that ourselves, then I think we're doing art a disservice.
Yeah, no, I think that's absolutely right what you're saying. And just to say, as an American, so coming into the UK,
Sure.
And hearing this term BAME was really interesting to me because, you know, it's Black, Asian, minority, ethnic. And in the US, actually, the experiences of Asian Americans and Black Americans are quite different. So we wouldn't see to put them together. And so I think it's so important when you're thinking across borders geographically that other people's experience, you know, when they take a term, they will impute what from their own perspective on those things. And so it's really important to be checking those types of things and discussing them, as you say, but then not getting too bogged down and not letting it move you on to action.
Yeah, I think action's critical here. I mean, you know, there is a danger that, you know, the arts, you know, can get locked into this cyclical conversation. We're not confident yet to move, but you've got to take the plunge at some stage. And sometimes you're going to fail, and that's okay. But as long as you're learning and mistakes are made for the new invention to come through. But I fully agree, Tonya. Action is the most important thing. But we do need to be clear about principles and language, and we need to share and own it, and make sure that the contribution to define the language comes from the very communities that we're trying to represent in the kind of the idea of, you know, marginal or the decolonized or, you know, colonized, and those in the kind of trauma of the past that lives in the kind of memory of the future. You know, so, you know, all of this is something that does need careful thought. And once you've got through that phase, you deliver and then you recalibrate, and there'll be a new term that comes out of it because we've learned something new, and because there's new energies born all the time. You know, I went back to my parents' place recently, and I saw, you know, mothers and their kids going to school, and I was thinking, dude, wow, I used to do that 45 years ago, and here we are. So there's always a birth of something new happening. And the systems seem aligned, or they seem to be quite similar, but there's something else going on because we're living in a different age, and we've got to change according to times. We've got to forecast that change. The great thing about the art sector is that it, you know, yes, I know there are issues with, you know, the institution, and, you know, is it fast enough? Does it respond to the root? But I do believe that, you know, we are an open sector, and that's what makes it. That's why we come to this sector to work, because we know it's a sector, you know, where one can belong and one can make a difference.
Yeah. Well,
So
thank you. Yeah. Well, thank you for that. I mean, we're gonna have to wrap it up now. Unfortunately, we've reached the end of our time.
Oh.
But Skinder, I really appreciate you taking the time, and it was a really great conversation. And I could see from the chat that, like, people have all sorts of questions about, like, can I hear more about this? Can I hear more about that? So we will try to send out links to things that have been referenced in this conversation. Okay. But I want to thank you so much for joining us. And then I just want to hand over back to Edmund.
Who thanks, Tonya, for receiving me, and such a great conversation. We'll keep it going.
Thanks.
Thank you so much, both of you, for that really impassioned and very frank, I think, discussion about some rather complicated and difficult topics. So thank you so much. I think the main thing I was struck by with both of you commenting on the need for shift, and you know, Skinder, you said how it's about letting go of control, and Tonya, you mentioned how actually we can do things faster than we maybe think we can. Definitely food for thought before our next session. So we've got a small break now. We'll be coming back at 11:30, where we'll be joined by Ana Elizabeth Gonzalez from the Panama Canal Museum. So feel free to stretch your legs, get a coffee, and we'll be back at 11:30. Thank you very much.